Hey everybody, this is Natalie. I'm back doing podcasts and it feels really good. I've missed doing them and I needed some time off to rebuild the business in the middle of the COVID pandemic. So it is a pleasure to be back and I'm getting nervous. I'm here with my trusty sidekick Milo, so he's over here by the fireplace and hopefully he doesn't bark during the podcast. We'll see. All right, we'll have to do a bloopers reel. Whew. Hey everybody, this is Natalie Griffin and I am so glad to welcome you to my new podcast called Sacred, Wild, and Real. And what we're talking about tonight is something that's really important to me. You know, we're about to embark on a brand new year here in 2021 and while a lot of people would call 2020 a total dumpster fire, I mean, really, it was one wave of chaos after another wave of unrest and dis-ease and unease and difficulty and lots of tragedy. And I don't want to minimize that in any way because that's real. It's real. And also what is real are the feelings that we've had and experienced in 2020. Some of which are deeper and more intense than any feelings we've felt before in the past. And so from my perspective, one of the things that 2020 has been calling us into is a deeper understanding of our own emotional bodies, of our own mental states, of our own choices and whether they are sustainable for our soul, for our planet, for our physical bodies. I think we are moving into a time right now over the next few years of a new era in which we have some choices to make about how to consciously create what it is we want. So tonight what I want to talk with you about is how to stay grounded, how to stay stabilized somewhat and feel stable inside in the middle of the outside world in complete topsy-turvy mode. Things are changing outside every day, and every day you can pick up a newspaper or look on the internet and the news is something unexpected. And that can create a lot of fear. It can create a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of nervousness in human beings because we like when things are predictable because it makes us feel safe. So the question becomes for us, because none of us can create consciously if we don't feel safe. And many of us expect to find safety from outside sources, from a partner, from a lover, from a certain number in a bank account, from a certain lifestyle, from a certain weight, from a certain way to look. And we have to, in the coming years, we have to let go of these external sources of validation and meaning. Because as we can see, they change all the time. They are not enduring, is what the Bhagavad Gita says. Anchor yourself to something enduring, something eternal. And the only thing that is eternal in many, many cosmologies around the world is the human soul, is the energy that makes us up. It's the only thing that lasts. And so how can we become grounded in that aspect of being human? Because everything around us is changing. And so it's a losing proposition to try to find safety and stability outside of ourselves now. And we've gotten harsh lessons in that, many of us in 2020. So I love Marie Forleo. She's one of my, mentors and doesn't know it because I just stalk her on Facebook and do all of her programs. But Marie Forleo definitely had this great phrase of calling 2020 the dumpster fire. And for many people, it has been that. It's just been a chaos burn. And it's also, though, had in it tremendous gifts. And now what we're going to do is turn our sights forward and figure out how can we become safe and stable on the inside so that we can create consciously in the coming years, in the coming months, in the coming weeks. So I want to share with you a practice tonight that I call floating stones. Oops, I just hit my microphone. I call it floating stones, which seems like counterintuitive. Like stones are heavy, they sink when they're in water. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about this metaphor. In terms of the medicine wheel and in Dharma school right now, the students are going through something that we call water medicine. And in water medicine, it's an opportunity to come into right relationship with our emotional body, to understand the power of our emotions. And in our Western culture, emotions get kind of demonized. There are only a certain few emotions that are okay to feel. And one of them is, joy, happiness, hope. And those things are favored, and in other cultures, those are not favored depending on your family of origin. So all of us learned kind of an independent short list of what's appropriate to feel, or at least to demonstrate. So we end up in this love-hate relationship with our emotions. We want intimacy, we want human connection, but that comes through emotions and we don't like those. So we want to figure out a way to intellectually connect or physically connect to people, and it's insufficient. So we have to develop a mastery and a strength. It's like a muscle. We have to develop a strength in our hearts, in our emotional capacity, and grow it. Now is the time. So we have to begin understanding our emotions as teachers, our emotions as friends. And as Rumi calls it, one of my favorite poems called The Guest House, he says, let them come in as if they are honored guests, each emotion as they visit, and take care of them. And then one day they will leave, and that's it. So our emotions are our honored guest. It's kind of a privilege of being human. I mean, here we are in these little squishy bodies as a human, and we get to have all of this human experience, to feel cold, to feel heat, to feel pain, to feel joy, to feel grief, to feel hope, to feel love. Like, what an experience. So we want to deepen our capacity for that. One of the practices that I like to use is this practice of being grounded. So a lot of people know about getting grounded and being grounded. And I'm going to talk to you about like a level 1 getting grounded, and now we're going to level up in the way that we get grounded now that we need it now in these times that we're in. So level 1 getting grounded is really, and if you're not practicing this, then I really recommend that you develop a practice around this. It's the ability to connect your awareness, your conscious thought, to what's happening in your physical body. In yoga, we do this all the time when they say things like, your teachers say, connect to your breath. And it's just about, and we're going to do it right now together. So become aware that you're breathing. And just hear the breath. And more importantly, feel the breath moving the rib cage. Can you feel the breath moving the rib cage? Just bring your awareness to that. It sounds so simple, and my loves, it is not. It's a discipline of the mind to bring the attention away from the future, away from the past, away from the external world, and bring it inside. And all you need, if you're not feeling a little different now, just by paying attention, bringing your conscious thought and connecting it to your breath and your body, you begin to feel a little different. It has a physical effect in your body. It also releases chemistry in your brain that helps you feel more positive. The serotonin and dopamine levels start to go up. So a conscious few breaths is an excellent way to get grounded anytime you feel triggered, anytime you feel stressed. And people say, take a deep breath, but you can go, okay, now what? And it's not a conscious breath. It's not a mindful breath. So to get grounded, you need to have an ability to consciously breathe. That's step 1. And if you want to take that a little further, then to bring consciousness to your physical body in all the ways. Like, can you feel the temperature of the air on your skin? Can you become aware of the temperature of the air on your skin, of the clothing touching your skin? And not judge it, or go to a story about, oh, this sweater's itchy, I wish I would have worn something else for the podcast, or not to go to those stories, but to go to just the pure sensation, itchy, heavy, skin, period. This is like 101 getting grounded. This is a necessary skill for the years to come for your life, to build a life that's in alignment with what you need, what you want to create in this world, this new era that's emerging. You have to have this capacity to connect to the breath and kind of unhook from the external world and the drama and stress and chaos that's there. You have to be able to unhook and come back to the breath. The breath is constant. The breath is always going to be with you until the day that you don't need it anymore. You can always count on that. So that's 101. Okay, I feel like I've talked about that enough. So now let's talk about this other grounding technique that I absolutely adore because it's called floating stones, which is just a great name that I love. The reason that I love floating stones is because in a time in my life where I remember it was super chaotic in my world, I was thinking about getting a divorce. I was unhappy. I was stressed. I didn't really like myself. The kids were really young. There was a tremendous amount of stress. My parents had just died. It was a lot of stress, and you get that. And I loved, and I couldn't explain why, but I loved paddleboarding out in the ocean. I love doing yoga on my paddleboard out past the break in the Atlantic Ocean because there are these giant, like sometimes 4 foot, 5 foot swells that are just huge. And then depending on the wind velocity and direction, then you'd get these ripples on the surface of the water. And so there'd be these swells and these ripples to navigate. And then there's this current that runs right off the coast of the Atlantic in Delaware that runs north, and then so you can kind of feel the current moving the board, and there all this instability right underneath you, and it was really challenging and exciting and focusing and meditative for me to figure out how to stay on the damn paddleboard in the middle of all of this disruption. And I loved it, and I found peace and serenity in this practice of paddleboarding in these, riotous situations. I've paddleboarded in 13 knot winds and 5 foot swells, and it's peaceful to me because I have to use another part of my body and another part of my brain to create safety and stability there. And my love's another part of my heart. So imagine you're standing on a little 6 foot paddleboard, and that's if you're lucky. Most of them are like 5-6 feet. So 6 foot paddleboard out in the swells, there's all this surface tension in the water, and it's unstable. And yet you've got this oasis of stability that you're standing on in the paddleboard. So the paddleboard stays right there underneath your feet if you're lucky. And you have to use all these stabilizing muscles to stay on that. So you can't be rigid on a paddleboard. You have to be able to move with the rhythm of these swells, of the ripples in the water. You have to soften into the paddleboard. Usually we think of grounding. So grounding 101 is like becoming like the mountain, like Tadasana in yoga. And it's a masculine posture. It's erect and it's stable and it has a clear direction. It's like a ray of sunlight. Tadasana, strong spine, straight up, connecting to the sun. So powerful. And this is fundamental in our practice to be able to achieve this stability and calm of a mountain. To take it to the next level, we need to learn how to be stable as feminine, and the feminine energies of constant change. Feminine energy is characterized by the turning of the moon, which is never the same, the turning of the earth and the seasons, which is never the same. The feminine power is the ability to maintain safety and power in a constantly changing, somewhat chaotic environment. It's the ability to hold safe in the middle of all the swells and ripples on the surface. And so if you can imagine standing on a paddleboard, that's what you're doing. You're creating stability, a micro stable environment. Instead of worrying about the macro, you are plugging into the micro stabilities of this moment, of this breath, of this swell going up and the swell going down, and the body softens into it to feel the natural choruses and natural rhythms. And in that way, you're getting into the flow. So you can learn a lot from paddleboarding in the ocean. So most of us are not going to go out into the ocean and jump on a paddleboard right now. So how can we bring this into our real lives? And I'm going to tell you a couple of examples of how I've used this, and I've seen my clients and students use this tool of floating stones. As we have, for instance, an intensely emotional experience that's uncomfortable. Let's call it getting triggered for now. That's a buzzword that's getting a lot of press. So let's say you get triggered by something. Somebody looks at you sideways, somebody challenges your authority, somebody breaks up with you, whatever's happening, and you get triggered and you want to, punch a fist through the wall or scream or cry and quit and lay in the couch under covers watching Netflix for the next 5 years. So you get emotionally triggered by any of the emotions. It doesn't matter which emotion it is. So emotionally triggered, kind of hijacked, like whoo, big. How do you stabilize and feel safe in this chaotic environment? So right now it's like you got dunked in the ocean. You're triggered, you're emotional, you're like floating around in this chaos of the ocean. The way to get grounded in that is to kind of lift yourself up out of it just enough, like a couple inches, to get on the paddleboard, to get on this floating stone, right? And realize what's happening right now inside you. That's the question that takes you in. What's happening inside me? When we're emotionally hijacked, our entire focus goes out there and we think things should be different. We think things ought to be a different way. We think people should be doing different things than they are and making different choices. It's all a distraction, my friends. So when you are getting on a floating stone, you're taking a breath and you're getting out of that and going inward. What's happening inside of me right now? And you start with that breath. And then the level up here is, in this chaos, how are you feeling? What emotions are present? You have to ask that. Now, most of us have only access to a handful of words for the emotions that we feel. Maybe, research will say that we have between like 5 and 15 words that we use to describe our emotional state. It's insufficient. We need to increase our vocabulary of what emotions are possible inside of a human being so that we can start to get nuanced understanding of our capacity to feel. And naming those feelings helps us kind of echolocate where we are. It helps us get plugged in to that floating stone. So you can say when there's a breakup and you're emotionally hijacked and they should have said this and they should have been like that and they should have whatever, you can ask yourself, okay, what's happening inside me right now? And maybe the predominant feeling is sadness because of the loss. But what did you lose? That's another question to take you inside. Maybe the experience is fear. Fear because you might lose something. What's the fear that you might lose? Wow, I'm afraid that I might lose this dream of life I had. I'm afraid of losing that. I'm afraid I've already lost it as this person left my life. Whew. Now, my friends, you're square on top of a floating stone, because you have discovered what's happening inside of you and you've named it. That's the key. That's the key to getting on a floating stone, is staying grounded in a moment of chaos. It can be chaos, whether it's the political debates, whether it's the COVID, whether it's the vaccine controversies. All of these things out there are chaotic. They create fear and disturbance in our emotional states. So how can you get on a floating stone there and find some safety inside of yourself? It's by taking a breath, getting up on top of that stone instead of swirling around in the chaos with everyone else. You got to exit the chaos with a deep breath and ask yourself the question, what's happening inside me right now? Emotionally, what is happening inside me? What emotion is this that has hijacked me? And when you name it, then you can come into right relationship with it. Like, oh, I'm angry. I'm enraged right now. Got it. And at least now you know where you are. It's like those maps in the mall where it's like, you are here. You are here. You're angry right now. Great. What injustice are you perceiving? What's the injustice that you're perceiving? So this is the way that we start to get on the floating stones, is to take a breath and really assess what is happening inside emotionally. We have to, my belief, in the coming years, especially in 2021, begin getting in right relationship with our emotional bodies. I would argue that most of the chaos that we see in the world that we experience in our own lives is because we are out of right relationship with what we feel. We don't know about our feelings. We don't care about our feelings. We can't empathize appropriately. We project our fears onto other people. We're out of alignment with greed. We're out of alignment with our own self-worth. And so that creates fear and defensiveness. So we are having trouble relating to each other as humans because we're out of right relationship with our own emotional states. So we have to increase our vocabulary. And you can do that by going online. If you Google feelings wheel and go to images, you're going to get a plethora of information about the nuances of anger, about the nuances of sadness. There are more emotions than that. So increase your vocabulary around emotions and really practice. Unless you really like your suffering, some people really like suffering. And if you're one of the people that likes suffering, you're probably not listening to this podcast. But if you do like suffering, then by all means, don't do this. Don't discipline your mind to take a breath and unhook from what's happening in the outside world. But if you're committed to feeling good, creating a better future for yourself, your family, and the planet, then these are the practices that are going to take you there. Get grounded in your body, get grounded in your emotions, and you're going to be on that floating stone riding the waves instead of getting consumed by them. So learn to surf. That's the message for tonight. Learn to surf. Jump on your paddle boards, darlings. All right, so that's all I wanted to say about this. So floating stones, get on those little pockets and micro moments of safety. And the safety comes from inside. There is nothing on the outside that's going to provide safety. Nothing on the outside. No job, no magical number on the scale or in your bank account. It's a fundamental feeling inside of that you're breathing. There's life. It's enough. And we have to cultivate that like fiercely right now, like mad people, like people howling at the moon. We have to cultivate an internal safety right now because there are so few safe people on the planet. And to be a lighthouse, we need to cultivate that inside ourselves first so that we can hold space for those around us. So that's what's happening now, my loves. Welcome to Sacred, Wild, and Real. This is Natalie Griffin. Oh, and I wanted to tell you, I'm doing a workshop on emotional learning about all of this stuff, about what are emotions, how can you increase your emotional capacity, your heart space, how can you open it up to hold and come into right relationship with all sorts of feelings, specifically shame, guilt, anger, hope, and joy. So that's what we're going to be talking about on February 20th. It's going to be an online workshop, and you can check out our Facebook page for more details about that. All right, darlings, this is Natalie Griffin, and I am wishing you a very happy 2021. Happy surfing. Did it. Oh, that was fun. It's fun to tell those stories. We'll see you.